بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Our topic, there's a slight modification. It's cryptocurrencies in Akhir Zaman. So we can fine-tune the subject. And we begin with a verse of the Quran from with Surah Al-Anfal, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivers a warning: beware, beware, beware of the fitnah which is coming. It's a test, it's a trial, it is something which will cause you distress as fitnah, and it is not going to target only those who are unjust and wicked and sinful. All will be tested. All will be tested. What is Allah talking about when He speaks about warning us about tests which are going to come? And our answer is, this is one of them. This is one of them. The tests and trials that are taking place in the world of money. And our second comment is that it's a test and a trial with a rope around your neck. And if you have been reading and observing what is happening in the world of money, but you will excuse me if I say most people don't have time for that. They're more interested in their biryani and going home to sleep than to devoting attention to understanding signs of the last day which are unfolding ominously before their eyes, but they're not observing it. If you have been observing what has been happening in the world of money, then you would understand that with something they call cryptocurrency, which we never heard about it just a year or two ago, new terminology, that the rope is tightening around the necks of those who are being tested and who are failing the test. Our third comment is that our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, warned about riba. And when you have studied the subject of riba, you will understand that all the changes which have been taking place in the world of money are located in riba. He warned about riba. It is the last revelation to come down in the Quran, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, that the last revelation to come down in the Quran was the revelation in which Allah declared war on those consuming riba. He and His Messenger declared war. And we're going to get a taste of that soon when the Great War takes place. The Great War is coming. I don't think the American armed forces want that war. They must prefer to fight Libya. I'm sure the Russians don't want that war. No. But there are those who do want the war. And even if they have to have a false flag attack to ignite the war, they'll do it. And once it is ignited, neither the Russians nor the Americans can do anything to prevent it. So it's coming. Allah has declared war. And if you study the war which is coming from the Quran, and again, most people don't have time for the Quran. No. They have time for everything else. And those who do have some time lack the methodology for studying the Quran. When you do study the Quran, you'll see that this war which is coming is not going to be a haphazard war, but rather Allah will be on one side of this war, and the other side is going to taste a bitter taste, and He's going to punish that side in this war which has been at the heart of riba, grown fat with its banking system and its monetary system, which has sucked the blood of the masses around the world for too long. And now the chickens are coming home to roost at long last. We're not afraid of death, you and I, but they are afraid of death. We are not afraid to die, you and I, no. And if we have to die, if we have to make this qurban so that the oppressor, the bloodsucker, might be destroyed, we don't mind paying this price. The monetary system is based on riba, and Allah is going to punish that riba, those who consume that riba. And our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, has warned about riba. He said, the time will come when you'll not be able to find a single person in all of mankind who will not be consuming riba. And whoever says he's not consuming riba, verily the dust of riba would be upon him. Verily the vapor of riba will reach him. So there is no escape. None. But then what do we do? What should the Darul Ulum be doing these last 100 miserable years? And if sometimes you see a hint of anger inside of me, you will kindly forgive me. Yes, there's a lot of rage and anger inside of me, but I must try to control it. If there is no escape, these last 100 miserable years that this monetary system has come, and ominous changes have been taking place in the world of money, what should we do? Surely the Darul Ulum and the ulama should use the mimbar of the khutbah of the masjid to explain and to guide the people. Our Prophet said, Allah's blessings be upon him, that when you are faced with two evils and there is no alternative, he said, choose the lesser evil. Always choose the lesser evil. And so when we approach the subject of cryptocurrencies and we look for means of responding to it, and we find the noose tightening around our neck, like I was flying from Geneva to London, and incidentally it takes an hour and a half from Geneva to London, and then takes 3.5 hours from Heathrow to Ilford Hotel. And you want a bottle of water on British Airways, you've got to pay for it. They offer you nothing as a traveler. But I've been traveling for 50 and more years now. My first time on an aeroplane was in 1961 when I was 19 years of age. It's a long time I've been traveling. And I know that only the cheap airlines There you have to buy whatever you want. But all other airlines, they offer you at least a bottle of water or a glass of water or something, but not with this mysterious airline called British Airways. And when you want to buy your bottle of water and you take out Swiss francs, because the aircraft started from Geneva, so you should be able to pay with Swiss francs, they said, sorry, we don't take cash. No, we don't take cash. You have to pay now electronically, even for a glass of water. So then I realized that really the noose is tightening around our necks. That I cannot even get a glass of water if I don't have the card by which I can access money electronically. I think you would agree with me that the hour is now very late. And we need an answer. Why are there distinguished scholars of Islam, the ulama, the maulanas, the muftis, the ones who teach the Darul Uloom, that teach in the Jamia, why are they not teaching the subject? Why are they not analyzing what is happening in the world of money? And why are they not guiding the people? That is the first question. But the second question causes tears from the eyes. The second question is, not only are they not teaching it, perhaps because they don't know the subject, or perhaps they find the subject too dangerous, but not only are they not teaching it, but when Imran comes to teach the subject, no, we won't allow him. We won't allow him. That is so sad. In order for us to look at the subject of cryptocurrencies in Akhir Zaman, we are not so much interested in how to use cryptocurrencies to make more money and get rich. How to use a system to be able to survive and to make more money. You need to go to some other scholar for that. We're not so much concerned in all the mechanics of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and so on. There are many experts who can do that. A scholar of Islam is not expected to do that. What we are concerned with is a simple definition of the subject of cryptocurrencies, and then more importantly, is it halal or is it haram? And then finally, most importantly of all, why has it come at this time? What is the role that it is playing at this time? And how can we anticipate what is to come? Those are the more fundamental things that we would expect from Islamic scholarship. In the little time that we have tonight, and I always learn from my audiences, I always benefit from your views. There'll always be someone who knows the subject a little better than I do. So there's a time for me to speak, and there's a time for me to listen. I travel extensively around the world. I'm now 76 years of age. So I do have some experience of interaction with audiences in many parts of the world. The nice thing about here is that I can speak in English. So imagine I accept your sympathies when I have to speak in French. In France, okay? And when I visit Pakistan in August, and they demand that I must speak in Urdu, and you don't have a command of these languages, you can sympathize with me. Cryptocurrencies are simply another form of electronic money. And so we see a movement from the tangible to the intangible, from the visible to the invisible. And if you've had more than a passing acquaintance with Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, and if you are aware of the fact that even one word in the Quran or one phrase in the Quran might be enough, Allah says this is enough. Kathalik is one word. Kathalik is one word. And when Zulkarnain traveled in the direction of the rising of the sun and came across a people, lam naj'al lahum min duniha sitra, and he came across a people for whom we had provided nothing more as sitr, a covering. So perhaps a people living a primitive life, how would he deal with them? How would he respond to them? And the response in the Quran is one word, just one word, kathalik. You now have to go into that and understand what is Allah saying with one word, kathalik. Meaning, he met them like that and he left them like that. He respected their right to live their way of life, the primitive way of life. And so, if you've had more than a passing acquaintance with Surah Al-Kahf, you would know that you cannot dig a hole and bury electronic money, which is what was done in Surah Al-Kahf. And then he built a structure, a wall, on top of it. And this is not stories, bedtime stories, for you to enjoy the story and say wah wah. Because the Quran came down لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And the only time you will enjoy the Quran, the only time the Quran will transport you to worlds of joy and ecstasy, is when you travel beyond the recitation of the Quran regularly in Arabic. And of course, you know it has to be from cover to cover. You know that, don't you? I don't have to come and remind you of that. And when you finish, you start again. And when you finish, you start again until the angel comes to take you. You know that. I don't have to remind you of that. And if you've not been doing that, I advise you, start today. To enjoy the Quran, you have to do more than simply recite the Quran in Arabic. You have to understand what you're reciting. Otherwise, continually reciting the Quran or listening to the Quran being recited in Salat, and you don't understand what is being recited. And someone asks you, well, I don't know, but it was a nice tune. If you remain like that, you're disrespecting the Quran, and therefore disrespecting Allah, and you'll have to pay a price for that. But to enjoy the Quran, you have to go beyond simply reciting it and getting the surface meaning. You will enjoy the Quran on that day when you apply the thinking process. Allah sent down the Quran لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, to a people who think. And when you think and ponder and reflect and seek to penetrate into the internal substance of the Quran, on that day you will enjoy the Quran. And so it's not just a story that he dug a hole and he buried the money. and then he built a wall on top of it. But rather, it is an event in the Quran meant to convey a profoundly important message for Akhir Zaman. And this is the surah of Akhir Zaman, Surah Al-Kahf. So they began with, they began first with paper money, and then they moved from paper money to electronic money. And now we are with cryptocurrencies. And the difference between the electronic money and the new form of electronic money is that with the normal electronic money, there was still the control of the governments over it, and control over the banks over the electronic money. The US dollar in its electronic form, the euro in its electronic form, the government still controls the euro, the US government still controls the US dollar, and so on. The banking system still controls that money. But then comes a new form of electronic money. And this form of electronic money makes Russia smile, makes China smile, makes Iran smile, and makes Venezuela joyful with laughter. But these were always the targets of the West. So why would they bring a new form of money that causes the targets of their attacks to be so happy? Yeah. The answer is because the cryptocurrencies appear, and perhaps actually are, outside of the control of governments, outside of control of the IMF and of the banking system, and as a consequence allow the targets who have been suffering because of monetary attacks on them to get some relief. And so they welcome the cryptocurrencies. So it's electronic money, which seems to have private origins rather than public origins, and is privately maintained outside of the control of the banking system. So private money. Strange, huh? Never had anything. Private money before. Public money and private money. We never had the term monetary system in the first place. There was no subject like monetary economics. Never. And then came a new form of money and a new branch of knowledge called monetary economics. And now we have a new term now. We have public money, we have private money. But my responsibility is, someone in Islamic scholarship, is not my responsibility to go into this private money and examine all its mechanics and explain that to you. That's not my job. Somebody else will do it. If it is outside of the control of governments and outside of the control of the banking system, and that pleases people, fine, that's their choice. But we don't get our guidance from private sources. We get our guidance from the Quran and from He to whom the Quran was sent, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And woe unto those who will turn away from the Quran when seeking knowledge, including knowledge of this subject. Woe unto those who do not direct attention to the Quran and to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, either because they have more important things to do, or because they don't know how to go to the Quran to locate that which explains the subject. They've been too secularized. What does the Quran tell us about money? In order for us to determine whether cryptocurrency is halal or haram, our Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam warned about a time when people will no longer care for the distinction between halal and haram. But mashallah, you were here. And it's nice really to speak with a Pakistani audience in Britain. It's far more comfortable to speak to a Pakistani Muslim audience in Britain than in Pakistan. Yes, I tell you that. And I don't know what kind of reception I'm getting. I'm going to Pakistan for the first time in 5 years, in August of this year. But I'm excited, really, I'm excited to find the kind of energy. You would not be aware of it because you're living here. But I am coming from outside. And I have vast experience with Muslim communities around the world. So I find it exciting to see young Pakistani and Indian and Bangladeshi and Arab Muslims in this country. And they have such an appetite, such a thirst, such a hunger for knowledge of this subject. There are other places in the world I'll sit there for 10 years, 15 years, no one will come to me. None. To come to me to seek guidance from me, to seek knowledge from me. And here, even if they can spend 10 minutes with me, they are hungry for it. This is something exciting about Britain, yes, and I am enjoying being in your company, mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. If we have to ask the question, does the Quran give us guidance concerning cryptocurrencies? Is it halal or haram? It's not just Surah Al-Kahf and the story about the digging the hole and burying the money, and you cannot bury electronic money. You can bury only that which is tangible and visible. It's not just a story about the young man who slept for 300 years, and after waking up after 300 years, they took the money which they had, and incredibly so, it could still buy the food. I was 5 years of age when my father bought a motor car. He was a school principal and he wanted to take me to school. So in 1947 he bought a motor car, Hillman Minx. And he then took me also to the market on Saturday morning in the Caribbean island of Trinidad, and I saw him buy 100 oranges in a sugar bag for $1, Trinidad money. 70 years later, that's 300, eh? This is only 70. 70 years later, with that $1, I cannot buy even one orange. That is our money over 70 years. It's a strange kind of a money, as though it's leaking. It's leaking. It's losing value. It is suffering from a virus called inflation. And I realized when I studied sufficiently the subject of Dajjal, I realized that this was his most dangerous weapon of all. This one. To control every single one, but you put your toe on the line. If you step out, if you only step out, I'll destroy your money. It's called inflation. So after 70 years, $1 can't buy an orange. But after 300 years, they were using a different kind of money. Not this bogus money. After 300 years, their money had successfully stored value. Where does this terminology come from? We never heard anybody talking about money having a function of storing value. Nobody ever taught that to us. The Darul Uloom never talked about this. Yeah. Can you imagine now the rage inside of me? That I've been teaching this subject for 20 years or more. They wouldn't listen to me. So I'm all alone. And then they wouldn't even allow me to talk. What is his Akira? So let me restrain myself. The Quran has more pertaining to money than simply these two instances in Surah Al-Kahf. The Quran speaks about a kintar as a treasure. That Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he got up on the mimbar, and you know, nobody dares to confront Umar. No, not Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said about Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, إِذَا سَلَكَ فَجًّا سَلَكَ الشَّيْطَانُ فَجًّا آخَرَ. If he is on one road, Shaitan takes another road. This is Umar. So he found that people were asking too much for the meher. So he got up on the mimbar and gave a khutbah, and he placed a limit on the meher in nikah, the dowry. When he got down from the mimbar, a woman got up and spoke. Oh, really? Is it permissible for a woman to be in the masjid? To come in the masjid for salat? I didn't know that. Really? Look at that. Strange Islam they had in those days, not like today. Today we banish them. Go for Salatul Jummah. Woman out! So the woman got up. Is a woman allowed to speak in the masjid? Amazing. Where did this Islam come from? Why did Umar not say to her, woman, shut your mouth? What's wrong? We have a progressive form of Islam today, where women are not allowed in the masjid, and if a woman gets up in the masjid to talk, shut your mouth, you're a woman. She said, Umar, you can't do that. No man would have been brave enough to stand up and say that to Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. None. But the woman got up and said, Umar, you can't do that. He didn't say, woman, why don't you know your place? You can't challenge me. No. They had a strange Islam in those days. Yeah. He asked, why not? She gave the answer. And she quoted the verse of the Quran where Allah says, if you gave them as meher even a kintar, don't take it back if there's a divorce. So Umar stroked his beard, shook his head. He said, everybody have more knowledge than Umar. He went back up the mimbar. He said, oh people, I just gave you that order, I cancel it. A kintar is about 1,200 dinars. So we had a free and a fair market, yes. But our free and fair market had such controls and checks in it for wealth to be broken up and not concentrated. That wealth should not be concentrated. It should be broken up. That the maximum that someone could own and hold as a treasure is a kintar. And today you have 1% of mankind owning some 90% of the wealth of the world, and you call that progress? No, the Quran has more to it on money than these three that I have mentioned to you. If you want to know what is the definition of money in the Quran, we're not going to have the time for that tonight. But I have my book entitled The Gold Dinar and Silver Dirham, Islam and the Future of Money, and you can read that book in 1 hour. You don't need more than 1 hour to read that book. You'll find the definition of money from the Quran and the Sunnah. You have the word dinar in the Quran, you have the word dirham in the Quran. And a dinar in the Quran is a gold coin, a dirham in the Quran is a silver coin. But then when you go from the Quran to the Sunnah, you find that if there was a shortage of gold and silver in the market in Medina, what would they use as money? Answer: dates. Dates. And so you have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which I hope you are familiar with. I don't have to teach it to you again, which is crucially important for the definition of money in Islam. I don't know whether the State Bank of Pakistan has any interest in the subject. What is the definition of money in Islam? The Islamic Republic of Pakistan. He said gold for gold, silver for silver, wheat for wheat, barley for barley, dates for dates, salt for salt. Indicating that if a transaction involves an exchange of gold for gold, or silver for silver, or wheat for wheat, or barley for barley, or dates for dates, or salt for salt, it must be an equal transaction. You cannot have 1 kilogram on this side and 2 on that side. No. Because if you do that, it's not only haram, it's riba. Why? I'll explain in a moment, inshallah. It must be equal to equal. He said, it must be hand to hand, meaning a cash transaction. It's not allowed as a credit transaction. Hand to hand, meaning a cash transaction. Other than that, he said, it will be riba. What is common to all six is that they all use as money. When gold and silver were scarce in the market in Medina, they'd use wheat or barley or dates or salt. And so we have a definition of money from the Quran and Sunnah, that money in Islam is always money in which the value of the money is located inside the money. Because some people have difficulty with the use of the word intrinsic. So let me break it down to help them. Intrinsic means that the value of the money is inside the money. And it is a value created by He who alone creates wealth. Allah creates the value. That's the first thing about money in Islam. It is not a value which is located outside of the money and therefore can be manipulated by those who would like to manipulate it to their advantage and to your disadvantage. Is that so difficult to understand? Secondly, that money in Islam is when gold and silver coins are in short supply, it would be articles of food consumption. Food consumption. And there's great wisdom in that, because governments could ban you from keeping gold, as the government of the United States of America did in 1931. Yes, that's what they did. Ban you from keeping gold. You had to turn over all your gold to the US government, which then gave it to the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, and exchange it for you with paper, US dollars. And then after some time had passed, they changed the value of the paper dollars, and then You were ripped off. That's what the US government did in 1931, I think it was. I have a book entitled The Prohibition of Riba in the Quran and Sunnah. It's not available here. I have to rewrite that book, really. It was written about 20, 25 years ago, and I can't find the time to do it before it can be published again in a new edition. In that book, I have all this history in it. So the governments can ban gold, and that might become again. So be careful. If they ban gold and they ban silver, they can't ban sugar. They can't make it illegal to use sugar or rice, flour, so wheat or barley. So articles of food consumption therefore assumes strategic importance now for freedom. They can't be banned. But these are articles of food consumption which are in abundant supply in the market and which have a shelf life. So you can't use mangoes as money, even if it's the best mangoes of the world from Punjab. You can't use mangoes as money. Why? They don't have a shelf life. But if you are in the island of Java in Indonesia, you can use rice as money. But from Surah to Yusuf of the Quran, you would know that you would not shell the rice skin. Good, because that's what is there in Surah to Yusuf of the Quran. The story of the king and the 7 cows. You'd keep the skin on. So it's called paddy rice. I think maybe it's paddy rice. After you take off the skin, then you can polish the skin. No, it has a longer life if you keep the skin on, the rice skin on. Or if you're in Fidel Castro's Cuba, what would you use as money if you have a shortage of gold and silver? Don't tell me tobacco. No, you'd use sugar as money. Good. The PhDs in monetary economics would look at us disdainfully and laugh at us. And our responses are very polite. Goodbye, you go your way, and let us go ours. Because they lack the capacity to even comprehend the subject with their PhDs in monetary economics. Yes, they lack the capacity, it lies beyond their capacity to comprehend what is there in Islam. So leave them. They'll get jobs in Islamabad very easily. This is money in Islam. Money with intrinsic value, money created by Allah with value created by Allah, money which can also be articles of food consumption, which is in abundant supply in the market, and which has a shelf life. The story of how we lost this money and how it was replaced with paper money is a story. If you want to listen to that story, you have to get lots of handkerchiefs to wipe your tears. Yeah, because of the. I must guard my language now. Because of the sad betrayal, which is the softest language I can find. The sad betrayal of the Quran and sad betrayal of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam by even the most learned and distinguished of our scholars and our institutions of Islamic learning these last 100 years or more. But there were, I think I mentioned in my last lecture I was here, there were some people, some scholars of Islam in India, and India was the battleground. For the whole world of Islam, the battleground was fought in India, not Mecca, not Algeria, not Cairo, but India. That was the importance of the Indian Muslim community. And there were some scholars of Islam whose names today are forgotten because nobody considered them to be important. But those scholars of Islam stood up with courage and integrity and denounced the monetary, what was happening in the world of money. But they were like voices crying in the wilderness. And the established ulama swept them away. And so today they're forgotten. They're forgotten. And so we had the movement from gold and silver coins to paper money. And the new money did not qualify as money in Islam. But they did something more than simply take away the gold and silver and replace it with paper money. What did they do? They made it illegal to use gold as money. Yes. It is there in the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund. And the reason why they had to do that is that once gold and silver comes into the market, the good money will drive away the bad money. The bogus money will not be able to survive once you have valid money in the market. That's why they had to ban gold and silver. They brought the new money into the market because they could control it. And they could use it to grow rich. One form of riba is to lend money on interest. And Allah has prohibited money being lent on interest. Why has He done so? Would you ever hear a khutbah for Salatul Jummah? Will anyone ever deliver a khutbah for Salatul Jummah in which you would explain to the people why has Allah prohibited money being lent on interest? No, they have many other things to talk about in Salatul Jummah, but not riba. The reason why He has prohibited money being lent on interest is because this is not business. أحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. The business transaction is one in which you can make a profit or you can suffer a loss. And once you embrace risk, R-I-S-K, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can intervene and give to some and take from others. And so wealth can circulate through the economy, not through the intervention of government, but through divine intervention. When governments intervene in the socialist system, it leads to corruption. That was the Soviet Union. That was Hugo Chavez's economy in Venezuela. Wherever you had a socialist economy, of state-controlled economy, you ended up with corruption and destruction of free enterprise. And so, business and money lending on interest are not the same. In a business transaction, you can make a profit or you can suffer a loss. But in a riba transaction, you only want to ensure you get your pound of flesh. The world can go to hell if it wants. I must get my pound of flesh. What was the name of that sheikh who explained riba this way? The pound of flesh? What was his name? That's right. Great. One of the great sheikhs, huh? And what is the book? The Merchant of Venice. They can't ban it. They can't ban it. So we can still teach it. The pound of flesh, he said. There's a second reason why riba is prohibited. That when an economy is based on riba, wealth will no longer circulate through the economy. Wealth will circulate only around the wealthy. The relationship between the rich and the rest of the world is one-way traffic, not two ways. It's like a vacuum cleaner that you use to clean the carpet with a suction pump in it. And it sucks the wealth of mankind until one part of the world becomes filthy rich and the rest of the world is ripped off of its wealth. That's why Allah has prohibited riba. But I have something to say to them which would surprise them, the rich of the world who have grown rich through riba. Allah says, you know, it's good to study the Quran. It helps you to understand the world. الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا. Those who grow rich from riba. لَا يَكُومُونَ إِلَّا كَمَا يَكُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّتُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. They will live a life that will be strange. A strange way of life of these people. Eventually, they will behave the way those would behave who are driven to madness by the touch of shaitan. That's what Allah says in the Quran. And you can see in the United States, the fellow goes into a school and kills 15, 20 people. They go into a stadium and they start shooting here and there and everywhere. They go in a supermarket, they start killing people. They go in a cafeteria, they start killing people. They go on crazy out there. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. So you pay a price for your riba. Now they are moving away from paper money. They've already got all that they wanted to get from paper money while we were eating biryani and going to sleep. That's Islamic scholarship. You'll forgive my sarcasm. They got all they wanted. So why are they changing? They've used money as a weapon to take control of the world. So why are they changing? What is the reason for the change from a monetary system of paper money, which has profited them so much, to a new monetary system of electronic money, which is outside of government control and outside of banking control? That is the important question that we must now attempt to answer. I think it is Islamic eschatology more than anything else which can explain that answer. Nothing else. Monetary economics, no. But Islamic eschatology. Is it in Suratul Mursalat that Allah says, Intaliku ila zillin ذي ثلاث شعب? Proceed, meaning in the historical process, to a shadow which is going to come over the world, a shadow which is going to come over the political system, over the economic system, over the monetary system, over the educational system, over the spiritual life. Over the male-female relationship, over sports, over education, a shadow which is going to descend over the world. Intaliku ila zillin. And this shadow will emerge in three parts. This shadow will have three parts. Zi thalasi shu'ab. This is ayah mutashabiha, not ayah muhkama. The Quran has ayat muhkamat, which are plain and clear. And this is Ummul Kitab. And they have to be studied. And what constitutes a Muslim, the belief system of Islam, must come from here. The ayat muhkamat. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He has ordained the leadership of the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is vested in Ahlul Bayt, and they are of course my brothers, the Shia. I don't have boxing gloves, no, they are my brothers. If Allah has ordained that the leadership of the Ummah after Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is vested in the family of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and it commenced with Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who is included in Ahlul Bayt, then this must be in the Quran. Because if it comes from Allah, it's a part of our belief system. Yeah. If you reject it as I do, you're not a Muslim. If you reject this as I do, you are not a Muslim. You're kafir. No one can possibly challenge me on that. No, you can't challenge me on that. If Allah has ordained something and you reject it knowingly, you're kafir. And I reject it knowingly, so I'm a kafir. If Allah has ordained it. If it is a part of the belief system of Islam, it has to be in the Quran. If it's not there in the Quran, then be careful. Be careful, you're treading on dangerous waters. So the Quran has to establish what is the belief of the Muslim. And that has to be from ayat muhkamat. But then there are other ayat. The Quran is not comprised of only ayat muhkamat. And Washington is not happy at all with this. What is it? That Allah has placed ayat mutashabihat in the Quran as well. So they can have all their think tanks from Temple University to Harvard to wherever they want. They can never penetrate the Quran. Never. Because there's one part of the Quran which is ayat mutashabihat. And these have to be interpreted. And the interpretation, the knowledge of the interpretation will come only from Allah. It comes from a combination of rational inquiry and spiritual insight, and that's not sold in the supermarket. When you give an interpretation of the Quran, of course, you must say Allah knows best. Because you can be right, you can be wrong. So when I say that this is the shadow, and the shadow, which is of three parts, is this. It started with Pax Britannica, when the island of Britain took control of the world. And there is an amazing amount of solid evidence to support the view that this is the first part of the shadow, Pax Britannica. We don't have to go through that tonight. Don't forget, I made a trip to the Greenwich Observatory today. And when you go there, you'll see what they did to time. Then you have Pax Americana, which is the second part of the shadow. When the shadow began, we saw changes in the world of money. It was the Bank of England in 1697, I think it was, that the Bank of England was established. If you were born in Britain, you should know the subject better than me, eh? If you were born in this country, you should know this subject better than I do. The Bank of England was established, I believe, in 1697. And the Bank of England, shortly after it was established, started this scheme, this bogus scheme, of a promissory note in place of the gold coin. The sterling pound was a gold coin. And if you go to the museums, you probably could see what the sterling pound used to be, a gold coin. And then they started giving paper in place of the gold. And of course, you'll issue more paper than you have gold. And so you could make money off the side. And the scheme collapsed. And then they started again, it collapsed. Yeah. It's a bogus scheme. And people are ripped off. And that's how they eventually ended up with the Bretton Woods Accord in 1944. And the International Monetary Fund and this monetary system. And then came, at Bretton Woods, the second stage of the shadow, Pax Americana. And the US dollar replaces the sterling pound as the international currency. And now it's plain and clear that the US dollar, which along the road was transformed into the petrodollar, but I don't need to explain that to you. You know about the hadith, about the mountain of gold. If you don't know, then do your homework. The US dollar was transformed to the petrodollar, and who prophesied it? Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. The petrodollar, the river Euphrates, and the mountain of gold. And now we can see the evidence, and this is where we're in the discussion session now which follows. It can be interesting to talk about this, that the US dollar is now in irreversible decline. The petro yuan, this month is it? This month, March? The petro yuan is coming onto the market to deliver one more blow on the petrodollar. They're using China to support them. My friend in Venezuela, Maduro, has issued now his own money called a petro. I don't know what's the Spanish for it. They just did it in Venezuela. And so all the daggers are now pointing towards the US dollar. And the US dollar is now in irreversible decline. The Great War is coming that the Prophet prophesied, in which 99 out of every 100 would be killed. Okay, you know about that. Whether the Great War will come first, or whether the collapse of the monetary system will come first, I don't know. I don't know which one. But both of them are imminent. Now then, my view, and of course I can be wrong. When I give an opinion, I can be wrong. You should never accept my opinion unless you are convinced that it is correct. Because I do make mistakes. Alhamdulillah for that. It is perhaps because they do not want to have a sudden crash of the system. And as a consequence, chaos and anarchy in the United States of America. A land in which, incidentally, you are permitted to buy guns. You don't need any government approval. And so lots and lots and lots of Americans, usually the ones who are descended from the slave master, not the ones who are descended from the slaves, have lots and lots of weapons. And if there is a crash of the US dollar and a sudden liquefaction, you mean to make liquid of all their money, it just disappear, or vaporization of all their wealth, it could cause chaos in that country. It could cause anarchy with people using their guns randomly. And it wouldn't look nice, no? So they want perhaps to bring down the monetary system to make place for the third stage with what may be described as a soft landing. And perhaps cryptocurrencies, which are outside of government control and outside of the banking system, controlled banking system, is the weapon that they are using. to bring down the monetary system so that the government of the United States of America cannot stop them. And the powerful banking system in the world cannot stop them. And give the monetary system a soft landing. You know the way the sun goes down and then the light goes out gradually until night comes? So the monetary system will gently fade away. Like on my trip from Geneva to London, and I wanted to buy a bottle of water on an airline called, you must have heard it, British Airways. And they said, no, you can't pay with cash. No, you're going to have the card and buy electronically. This is the incremental attack taking place, little by little, piece by piece, incrementally, to bring about a gentle, soft landing, that the system will be replaced by another one without the mess of a crash. This is just my thinking, and I can be wrong. What is to come is a new monetary system. With stage one, you had the monetary system based on London as the financial capital of the world and the sterling pound. Stage two, you had a monetary system with New York as the monetary capital of the world and financial capital and monetary capital are two different things. This is what is money and this is how you use money. So this is the monetary capital of the world, Britain, London, and the financial capital of the world, because Britain becomes the money lender par excellence. Britain is the Shylock of the whole world during that time of the first stage of the shadow. And then comes the second stage of the shadow. Which surah is this? Which surah? Very good. This fellow is not eating biryani. Surah Al-Mursalat. And then you have Washington as the monetary capital of the world, because the World Bank is there and the IMF is there, and New York is the financial capital of the world because the banking system is based in New York. But its roots, of course, are in Zurich. And the US dollar replaces the sterling pound. And now we see the signs of irreversible decline, and something is going to come to replace. And so cryptocurrency can be used perhaps to play the role of bringing about the transition. What the new currency is going to be like, the new money is going to be like, I am pretty sure there's going to be only one currency in the world. Only one. They don't need this mess of 30, 40, 60, 80, 100 different currencies every night. It's much prettier and easier and manageable if you have one currency in the world, everybody using the same money. And that's when the rope around the neck will be tightest of all. For those who have eyes and yet cannot see will say, this is the best world of all. For those who are faithful to Allah and His Messenger, they will say, this is the tightest that the rope has ever been around our neck. They want the one currency for one world order. One world order. And it will be a world order that they will control, so that Pax Judaica can replace Pax America. This is the importance of eschatology, or Akhir Zaman. So you should not be surprised that there is such a phenomenal appetite in this country for this knowledge. I am absolutely amazed as the kind of response I'm getting since I've arrived in Britain. This is the third time I'm making short visits. Short visits. I don't come here to stay a long time. Short visits and low profile. You don't see my program on the internet. You don't know where I'm lecturing next. Nobody knows. You have to take the low profile. This is the importance of Islamic eschatology. To use the Quran, and I've only quoted 1 or 2 verses, there are many more, to explain what is happening in the world today and to anticipate what is coming tomorrow. What should we do? Answer: when you're faced with an evil from which there is no escape, always choose the lesser of the 2 evils, the lesser of the 2 evils. And my advice to you, particularly if you have children, is to get out of the cities before it's too late. You're going to lose your children if you've not already lost them. And go to the countryside. If you cannot leave Britain, if I could go and live in Pakistan, I'll do that. Oh yes. I tell you, and I eat a naan in Pakistan is far better than anything you can have in Britain here. I had naan today. My first naan in Britain. I said, but this is not even in a little roadside juggi in Pakistan. Roadside where we used to buy a naan for maybe 2 rupees. 2 rupees for a naan.
No, 8 rupees.
How much?
8 rupees.
8 rupees now? Right. 2 rupees or 1 rupee for a naan. When I went to Pakistan in 1964, $1 was equivalent to 1 rupee 75 paisas, yeah. So it could not be 2 rupees, had to be much less than that. We used to have chawanni and thanni in those days. So see if you can build a team of like-minded people, particularly the young, and buy land in the remote countryside where land is cheapest. And when you buy a large enough parcel of land, you build small huts. So you begin with small huts. You don't have to go to the bank to borrow money for that. You can build a hut yourself. All of you team up together and build your hut, and then build his hut and build his hut. Move your family out of the cities. Go to the remote countryside and produce their own food that you're going to consume. Don't depend on the supermarket for food. Produce your own food. Okay? Milk, meat, vegetables. That's priority number 1. You cannot produce your own food unless you have water. You need water. And so long as there is sunlight, there'll be food. And when there is no sunlight, is that possible? There'll be no sunlight? Yeah, wait for the big war. Wait for the great war that's coming. And you see no sunlight. And that's a hadith not only in our eschatology, in Christian eschatology as well. When there is no sunlight, there will be no food. You can't grow anything. وَإِنَّا لَجَاعِلُونَ مَا عَلَيْهَا صَعِيدًا جُرُزًا, Allah says in the Quran. I'm going to transform this earth into a dust bowl. Nothing will grow. This is in Surah Al-Kahf. So you can stock up on canned food. You can stock up on non-perishable food so you can survive for some time until the clouds can drive away the smoke, the dukhan, and the sunlight can return. And it is a time for you to buy dinar and dirham. If you're using sterling pounds to buy it, there is no escape. Don't tell me this is haram, because there is no escape. None. So we're choosing the less of the 2 evil. So my final comment is, to remain faithful to what is money in Islam, you should be buying not so much dinar, but more dirhams. Because it is dirham that you use for buying and selling food, particularly in Akhir Zaman. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.